Hello, ID 122, Maureen Curry here, welcoming you to week 2 of ID 122. I want to mention that this week we're going to be researching the Etruscan culture and the Roman culture. We're going to first begin with the Etruscans. We're going to look at their architecture, what we think their architecture was. They were a mysterious culture that disappeared. We know they were a sophisticated culture. We only know mostly about them from their tombs. We know they did build temples and they traded with the Greeks, so they must have seen their temples. Their temples were predominantly of wood and mud bricks, so none have survived. Etruscans were known to build underground tombs. They also invented the idea of corbelling, where they stacked stones to form dome-covered spaces. So their dead were buried in these underground tombs called tumuli. As I said before, we know mostly about the Etruscans from their tombs. The Egyptian, their tombs seem to resemble the Egyptian funerary practices. We know the Etruscans traded widely around the Mediterranean, so they probably interacted with the Egyptians and the Mesopotamian cultures and the Greek culture. This happens to be the Tomb of Reliefs. We can see they had relief sculptures on the walls. They were able to do stucco on the walls. They supported their structures with post and beam. We can see the columns supporting the ceilings there. And there's images of weapons, armor, household implements on the walls. We also know about the Etruscans from their sarcophagi, their burial practices. We can see from this sculpture on this sarcophagus of a couple reclining as though they're reclining in a dining event. And you can see the woman and man are shown equally with each other, showing women as equally important in the culture. We know the Etruscans decorated their walls. We see it in this tomb painting with scenes of hunting and fishing, so they had the ability to do frescoes. So they were interested in decorating their walls in colorful, exuberant kind of scenery. Another scene here, a banquet scene, where people seem to be under a tent. This is a totally painted scene on the walls. So it's very bright and colorful and cheerful. And there's a lot of images of women and men interacting. We know they had bronze casting. They had the ability to make decorative. So we know the Etruscans created impressive works of art. They interacted with the Greeks. We know they had Greek-style temples, although they were made out of wood or terracotta, so they didn't last. They did have interior spaces, celae, for their rituals. We know they had the ability to make sculpture, both in terracotta and bronze, and that we know mostly about their burial methods through their tombs. And we know that they did exuberant, colorful wall paintings. For ancient Rome, we believe they assimilated the ancient Etruscan culture. Art and architecture communicated the power of the empire and the emperor. You can see that in their structures. As far as Roman architecture was concerned, the major innovation was the Romans' ability to use concrete and use the rounded arch for extra strength and to expand the empire using the ability to span spaces, making aqueducts, and using the arch to make gates and large structures like baths, apartment houses, walls, monumental city gates. You can see ancient Rome was a very crowded place. And we realized that the Roman Empire got very large. It wasn't just in Italy and around the city of Rome. It was all pretty much up into Europe, east to Turkey, and around the northern part of Africa. And the reason the Romans were so successful, they were able to build roads and provide amenities like water and different amenities that made people that they conquered want to be Roman citizens. The Romans built many temples. They were similar to the Etruscan and Greek temples, with the column porch and the pediment on top of the column facade. The temples were dedicated to their gods. The difference between the Roman and Greek temples, they were set up on pedestals, so you had to enter up through steps. So they were set up on almost like a podium type thing. They used a variety of columns. Here we see the iconic Ionic capital on the fluted columns here. They had used a colonnaded columns to hold up the roof, and quite often some of the columns in the back would be engaged into the solid wall. So do remember, for Roman architecture, they had the innovations of the arch and concrete construction. They had a very strong formula for their concrete. They were able to come up with the barrel vaulting, where they put a lot of arches together and made a barrel. They also invented the groin vault, where they took two barrel vaults and intersected them, so gave different kind of vaulting of spaces. They were able to go higher and higher with the use of concrete, and then they were able to put windows up above, clear story windows that would radiate light down into a space below. They had the ability to make huge domes out of poured concrete. And they also had a unique ability to have an oculus in the center of this dome, which would allow light in and air to this huge dome-covered space. They built apartment houses called insulae, and they were able to have people live in the cities stacked up. Down below would be the shops, and down below, up above, would be apartments and living spaces, all with the use of the strength of the arch. Among some of the amenities were the development of marketplaces. Here you see Trajan's shopping mall. And it was all through the use of the arch that they were able to have these vast open market spaces with shops underneath, places for people to conduct business and do shopping. So it was very pleasant being a Roman citizen. They built forums, which were very important for the economic life. There'd be markets there, basilica, law courts, libraries, temples. They built amphitheaters, places of recreation and entertainment for the people. This week I want you to look closely at the Roman house. The Roman house was situated on the street. People would enter from the street. They would go into the foyer, and then they would be in the open area called the atrium, which had light open above to let light in and rainwater. And they were able to save their drinking water in the impluvium, which was a pool here below the atrium, to store their rainwater for their own use. There were home offices where they would meet their business people and interact. They would have also a place, a dining room further in the back of the house. Also places to sleep, cubiculums, bedrooms, and a lovely peristyle column enclosed like a courtyard, like another atrium area to have gardens and light come in. So please study the characteristics of the ancient Roman house. The ancient Roman house is called the Domus, and I mentioned before, the guests would enter from the foyer. They would see decorated walls. The walls were painted with stucco colors, sometimes with faux painting that looked like marble, brick. They had the ability to save their water in the impluvium, their drinking water. Then get familiar with the different style of wall paintings. You'll see here in the private rooms, they were decorated images of the gods and goddesses recreating together, interacting. The stories of their gods would be displayed in these stucco walls. The second style of wall painting almost looks like you're looking through a picture window to the outside. The rooms were dark, but it made them feel like they were looking out the windows. Sometimes a garden would be painted on the walls to make it look like an exterior space. So become familiar with the different Roman wall painting styles. You can see how really involved with. They didn't have wallpaper, so they painted their walls in different ways. Please, you'll be tested on these different styles. So become familiar with that. They use mosaic decorations on the walls, on the floors. Also painted portraits of themselves on the walls. So we know what some of them look like. Sometimes there'd be still life paintings. So instead of having frame paintings on the walls, they'd have these paintings almost painted so accurately it looked like there's water in the pitcher and you could eat the fruit. So imperial art and architecture was to portray the power and strength of the empire. Through the use of their strong concrete formula, the Romans were major inventors of the basilica form, which later on would carry over into many other works of architecture, including major churches and the Gothic cathedrals. So this open, massive meeting space, based on their ability to span spaces with rounded arches. So be sure to get started in week 2. Begin with your readings on the Etruscan culture, their different Tuscan innovations in temple building. Look at Roman architecture, know about the development of the expansion of the arch and the vaults and dome-covered spaces. For the Roman public buildings, the Roman home or domus, the Roman wall painting, and the different styles of interior decorations. Look at Roman furniture. You're going to have a written assignment this week, and one tip for sure, when you learn the terms in the written assignments, they will be on the test. So if you learn them and write them here, you can always refer back to them to do the exam questions. There's also a discussion board this week on the different cultures we're studying. So please begin week 2, go to the modules and read all the pages in Canvas, read the textbooks reading, and be prepared to